I sat down with Johan, global head of IT and IT security at Asana, to talk about scaling. Your startup just went from 20 employees to 100 in 6 months. Congrats. We all love new friends. But here's what nobody warned you about. Your IT function can go one of two ways from here. It's your operational backbone or your biggest bottleneck. Johan scaled IT at Twitter, Lyft, Workday, and Asana, and he's learned that the companies that survive hypergrowth have one thing in common. They figure out how to evolve their IT systems before growth forces them to. This is the It Factor, presented by Rippling IT, where we bring you conversations with the most forward-thinking minds in tech. Let's get into it. Every growing company hits the same wall. All that stuff that used to work when you were only supporting a tiny team just doesn't scale.
When you're very small and you're growing very gradually, you can kind of have everyone in IT be a high-level generalist who's capable of doing just about everything. But if you suddenly are accelerating and in a year, you're going to double or triple or quadruple the size of the company, and you're also then proportionally growing the IT organization, you can't be at a point where every single person in IT, if there's 20 or 30 people, they all have admin access to everything and can just do everything.
When you're supporting 50 people, your IT person can know everyone's name and their laptop preferences. When you're supporting 500 people, that approach doesn't just bend, it breaks.
You have to actually start thinking in terms of how do we want to separate duties and responsibilities, building out a dedicated support part of the organization, building out a dedicated engineering part of the organization, and using those two teams to help serve and support each other.
The companies that win out in the end build this structure before they desperately need it. On the other hand, it's a tricky balance, one that's easier said than struck. Lots of companies will see this kind of growth on the horizon and act as if it's already happened. Johan's advice is to build your IT infrastructure with flexibility front of mind. And I love this analogy of his, by the way.
There's a tendency sometimes to build a mansion when you are actually going to get by just fine with the bungalow. And what I would encourage people, and that's a different way of saying it, is don't build immediately the program for that 10,000 person company that you think you might get to in 5 years. What will happen is it will become overly complicated. It will need excessive staffing, and you don't know how to predict with 100% accuracy where your business might go in 3 or 4 years. What you need to think about is building for flexibility and scalability, but don't build the target for 5 years from now tomorrow. Build it slowly and iterate over time. So then you can actually throttle. You can slow down. Great, we're not growing as fast. Let's keep it right here, meeting the needs of the business.
Johan watched many a company build elaborate IT programs right before funding dried up or market conditions shifted. The lesson being, the only constant in high-growth startups is change. Johan says if he could go back to his earlier scaling experiences, there is one thing he would prioritize above all. Automation.
I was really inadvertently conflating the idea that automation might not be as secure as a trusted person doing certain tasks. And I had a security partner once many years ago who really impressed on me the idea is like, there is nothing more secure than an automation because the automation will do without thinking exactly what you tell it to do. A bad day and I'm mistyping, it won't misspell people's names. It will take what you give it and output in the correct way. And so I really feel like, at this point, trying to automate as much as possible in IT to kind of get away from the whole data entry aspect or button pushing aspect of being a technologist, that's just table stakes at this point.
Because the reality is, when you're onboarding 20 people a week, manual processes don't just slow you down. They burn out your team, and they create tons of security vulnerabilities at each step. Now might be a good time to check out Rippling's onboarding automation guide. You'll find tons of tips in there. Many of us will be familiar with this very startup-y slogan, move fast and break things, which, sure, let's get moving, by all means. But a lot of the time, when things do break, it's your IT team that's being called on to fix it. And when you're scaling fast, every problem feels awfully urgent. So how do you decide what to fix first?
I would challenge someone to know by understanding their stakeholder needs. So if you work in a company, even if it's a small company, you probably have a contact in legal or a contact in finance or maybe some external security, engineering, you need to know the ecosystem of your stakeholders. Most of us, if you ask every single person in the room, which is the most important thing, they're all going to answer the one that's closest to them. So that's where you need to understand business prioritization and where those people will all sit, or what's going on in the business. If you're in a sales org, end of month, end of quarter, those are like critical times.
One of the most important jobs you can do is know how to triage. Know your business inside and out, and you'll have a much better shot at figuring out what's really a priority versus what can wait. Johan's been through 4 IPOs now, each of which has brought its own bouts with compliance. Again, his advice here is to try and prepare as best you can, keeping an eye on the future, without necessarily committing to one single path on how to scale your systems. Make it easy on yourself. Bungalow it up.
When you're still a private company, you're not as beholden to compliance obligations as you are once you become a public company. And, Sarbanes-Oxley is just one of those examples, but most companies, as they're maturing, are looking at different policy frameworks and figuring out how do they adhere to those, how do they comply with them. I, again, would encourage everybody, imagine that you're going to be a public company and start acting accordingly as quickly as possible, because that will help line up all of your process early on. If you're just practicing good security process, you should actually just be automatically doing a lot of these things like, checks and balances with account creation and offboarding your users in a timely manner and ensuring that all system access is revoked.
Surviving the public scrutiny that comes with, going public, it's about process and it's about diligence, because when auditors come asking for your laptop inventory, you're going to need a better answer than "I think Sarah has it" as of 2023. So what can you do this week to start scaling your IT function? Step 1. Separate duties before you have to. Start thinking about dedicated support versus engineering functions now, while you can still plan it thoughtfully and have some idea of when that point may come. Your future self will thank you when you're bringing in 50 new people and 50 new laptops every month. Step 2, automate the obvious. Identify every process that happens more than once a week. User onboarding, access provisioning, asset tracking. Automate it now while it's manageable and you can wrap your arms around it, not later when it's critical. Step 3, know your business stakeholders. Scaling IT means understanding business priorities. Be that enabler. Make friends with legal, finance, and sales now, so when everything breaks at once, a couple months down the line, you'll have an idea of what actually matters. None of this is about perfect planning because, spoiler alert, between you and me, there's no such thing. But it is about building systems that can evolve. Automate what repeats. Separate duties before chaos forces you to. Build relationships that give you business context when priorities are competing. And you might just find that bungalow of yours, as opposed to the mansion, ends up feeling like home after all. Want more stories like this? Join the 10,000 plus IT pros who subscribe to the It Factor newsletter, bringing you expert insights from the leaders redefining what IT means in the modern workplace. See you next time.